Welcome, everyone. My name is Marina Antunes, and I would like to welcome you to Spark Animation 2021 and this very special Meet the Filmmakers presentation, a discussion with the co-directors of HeadNoise, Rafael Jimenez and Alejandro Álvarez. Welcome both to Spark Animation.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, it's so nice to be able to talk to you guys and to be able to get to learn a little bit more about you and about the film, which is really fantastic. So congratulations. But before we talk a little bit about HeadNoise, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your career into animation. Like, what was it about animation? How did you get started? Can you talk a little bit about your careers leading up to the film?
So I'm a graphic designer. Since I was in school, I loved to draw and comic books and, well, many things. And after school, I decided for graphic design, and I really like graphic design. But just after graduating, I started working more in animation, but more in the motion graphics side, which is more the abstract commercials and different things. And I worked on that many years, but I always also liked the character animation part. So after doing commercials for quite a few years, I decided to study character animation on top of the graphic design and the motion graphic stuff that I knew. I studied in Animation Mentor, which is an online school with teachers from Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I kind of switched completely my career towards that. So I worked on many different things. I even worked on a game show for the US, A Minute to Win It for NBC. That was kind of my first character animation job. And then I started with movies. So I traveled to Argentina. I worked on a movie there, and I worked on some other movies here. And I met Alejandro soon after returning from Argentina, and we worked on different projects together for other companies. We did a lot of different stuff, commercials, 3D mapping, a lot of different things. And a couple of years ago, we decided to join and have this studio together with another partner. That's Epix Studios. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. And personally, I've been doing a lot of character animation and character animation supervision. And I also used to direct commercials and do character animation supervision for short films. And so it kind of all came together for HeadNoise. So now let's hear from Alejo.
My career started like an industrial designer, and I started with that. And I started to make the products in 3D, and I started to love that process. And I started to make some characters in 3D and start in this industry. And after that, I start to make some project with Rafael. He's a very great friend and made to work. And it's the same story of Rafael.
I'm curious, what is it about working together that works so well for you two? Because it's difficult. It can be difficult in a partnership. So I'm curious, what is it about working together that proves to be really good for the both of you?
I think, as you say, it's always difficult. And in this career, I guess most careers, but animation and commercial production, I think all audiovisual production is quite stressful. The days can be very long sometimes. The nights as well. And I think it can be very stressful. I think the first project we did together was for another company, and it was for the premiere of Transformers 4. And we had to do this very big 3D mapping to promote the premiere of the movie. And it was so stressful. It was huge. And I think neither of us had done something like that before. And so on that project, I met Alejo, and I think he's very talented, very, very talented. And at the same time, he's very easygoing. He's very calm. He's very patient, which is rare in this. So I think that compensates that I think I'm a bit more not serious, not in my job, but as a person. I'm a bit more serious. I get stressed easier than Alejo. So I think that's a nice balance. And also that we do kind of different things, because I think if we did exactly the same processes, it would be more difficult. We would headbutt more, but we would have more head noise problems. But I think we do different things. So my side is more of the animation side. I also like illustration and other stuff. Alejo is very technical as well. He can do rigging. He can do much more technical stuff than I do, and he's also a great 3D modeler. So I think that's a nice balance there.
I'm curious, how did the project come to you? How did you become involved with HeadNoise?
It was rather weird. I'm gonna tell this part because it came. I got an email from Donnie Wilson, who's the scriptwriter, and he was kind of the head of the whole project. So I got an email from him. I didn't know Donnie, but I had worked for a company in LA. It's called Jonas and Company. They do commercials, they do some TV production, and I had done, and there on one of their projects, which was a commercial, I had worked with another 3D artist, and Donnie had approached him, and he couldn't at that moment handle a project. He didn't understand how big it was, and I didn't understand that at first. It seemed like a big project, but this was a huge project. So he told me that if I'm interested, he had given my name and my email to Donnie. So Donnie wrote to me, and we started talking. And as I think from the second time I talked with Donnie, I understood how big the project was. So I told him, this is not a project for one freelance artist. It's a project for an animation studio, which Alejandro and I have this studio. So I introduced Donnie to Alejo, to Sophie, who's Alejandro's wife and also the producer, and to Fabian, who's the other partner. And so I introduced him to them, and that was it. You know, we didn't know anyone from the project from before. We hadn't worked together, which was also, I think, a challenge for such a big project. But fortunately, things worked out well, and the team grew so much that at one point, I think, Alejo, if I'm wrong, but I think at one point we had like 30 or 40 people working.
Yes,
on the
30, I think around the 30 people.
Yeah,
around the world.
Yeah, all over the world, actually.
Yes, and that was very difficult because that was during in the pandemic, just the pandemic time, and work with in that stress time and work with a team around the world in very different time zones, and that was very challenging, but very learning process for us.
Yeah, we pulled through.
So you had never clearly you've worked on projects before, but was this your largest project to date?
As a company, yes. I think both Alejo and I had worked for movies, so we had worked on bigger projects. But as a company, as head of the project, yes, by far it was. And at the beginning, HeadNoise was it's a strange project. I mean, it's not a common project. It's not like a children's series or a movie. And at first, it wasn't really a short film. It was an idea that kind of mutated towards a short film. And we always laugh at this because at the beginning, it was a 3-minute piece. And 3 minutes was like the top. And we always said, we cannot go like to 3:30. No, that's impossible. It ended up going, I think it was 6 something or 7 minutes.
Yes.
And the whole project just changed. It had fewer characters. It just grew and grew and grew and grew, and we had to adapt to that on the run. We just had to adapt to it. Everyone had to adapt to it, and it was quite a challenge. And as Alejandro said, this happened right in the middle of quarantine. Like everyone, we worked with people from many all continents. It was crazy.
For us, it was the first big project, not big project, but an entire project, because Rafael and I work on different parts of the pipelines. But this project we take from to the A to the Z, the entire project, and that was very challenging for us. And for that, we are taking like a big project for us because it's an entire project. And like Rafael said, we try to put an extra mile for every process in that project.
Yeah, and it took us to a whole nother level completely. I think both personally and as a studio, it took us to a whole different level.
I want to talk a little bit about the details, but before we get there, I'm curious, was it at any point where you like, we're way in over our heads, I don't know if we could actually pull this off?
I wouldn't say that we thought we couldn't in a technical sense, but I think at one point maybe the story was kind of changing, and we were already we had already advanced quite a bit. We at that point I think we had like 15 or I don't know 16 people working already on the project. So from a production side, the story started to change. That's when it also started to become longer. And I think at that point, yeah, we did have like some difficult moments where we thought, like, not that we couldn't make it, but how are we going to juggle this? Because we didn't want to stop the production completely because we knew that the budget would not allow that for us. I think these are more like production decisions, so it's not so much on the artistic side, but more on the production side. We had to take some difficult decisions. We had some difficult meetings, but I think we were able to it's always a negotiation. It's an artistic thing, but it's also always business and just production. So we had to settle for something in the middle. So we explained to the other side that we had to continue working with some of the things we had. Some of the other things we had, we said, okay, we're gonna redo those to accommodate to the new story. But that point was difficult. And I guess at the very end also, the end of any project like this is always quite something, because they were finishing the music and it became a bit longer and we wanted to accommodate everything. And 3D animation has some processes that are not dependent on people, just on machines and rendering, and it's also time. It also takes a lot of time and takes a lot of money, for example, to render a project like this. So at the very, very end, yeah, it was difficult, and I personally was going through a difficult family issue at that point. So all of that was difficult, but I'm very proud that we were able to pull through, and I think it's a strange project. It's a very special project, and I think we're both very proud of what came out of it.
Right now, I see the result, and I think it's very bigger. It's bigger than we think we're going to do.
I'm curious about, you were talking, Rafael, a little bit about how the story was changing as you were already in production. Was it the script itself that was expanding a little bit? They were still kind of writing the script as you were already in production?
How to say this? I think it's from the script side, from the story side, it's a very special project. So it's not the typical story of a hero that does this and overcomes an issue, and at the end everyone's happy. It's not that. I think in animation it's not a genre. It's more of a technique. So animation can be adult, can be children, can be comedy, can be drama, can be many things. But many people think animation it's for children, or it's always comedy, or it's always very light. So this is one example when it's not. It's actually a very heavy issue, and it's told in a very abstract way, I would say. Yes, there is a main character, yes, there is a struggle, but it's never told directly. It's told, through analogies, and yeah, you do understand the struggle at the end, but it's also a short film. It's such a heavy issue that if this was a movie, yeah, you would develop the story a lot more and you could tell it very differently, but it's a short film. And as I said, initially it was 3 minutes, so it wasn't even a short film, it was even shorter. So we took that and we made a short film, but even with those 6 minutes or whatever it is, it was difficult to tell that story. So I think that when we presented like the first or second draft of the whole animatic, so we had done all of the storyboards and everything was going well. When we presented, I think like maybe the second animatic, when it was edited together, it was, I think, around that, it was like maybe 4 minutes, Alejo, that version.
Yes.
It was hand-drawn and edited. And I think we all understood that it wasn't reading too well. It was so abstract that some parts weren't reading too well. So Donnie, he went in and he made some changes which were good for the story. But from a production side, it was difficult because at that point, at the same time, we were trying different things in the edit. We were moving things around, making this part longer, maybe making this part shorter. But since this is animation, we were already modeling the sets, we were modeling the characters. We had we had a whole sequence in the bus. Remember, Alejo? We had this bus sequence, and that completely disappeared. So we had already modeled the bus, and these are the types of things that happen on these projects. But in the end, it was much better for the story. I agree, of course. It was hard for production.
I'm curious if at any point, like, so clearly you're working very closely with Donnie. Did you have any input from Shaquille O'Neal as well? I know that he was very involved with the project and he helped co-write it and executive produced.
Yeah, but not directly to us. That was, Donnie has his team there, and I know that whole team was in contact with Shaquille constantly. We did not have like direct contact with him at that point. So because it was more like story things, so they took care of that on that side. So sometimes I think our concerns or our questions, of course, they would direct him to them. But it was such a big team, actually, that I think it was a nice idea that we handled it. I think 4 people or 5, because from our side, it was Alejo and me, and mostly Sophie, because she's the producer, and so she was the one that had the most contact from our side. And from their side, there was Donnie, and he would invite different people to each meeting, which was nice. So we would get input from different places.
Yes.
It keeps the process streamlined, right? So you can concentrate on the work that you're doing.
Yeah. Since this was kind of a complex topic, a complex theme, it deals with mental health, yes. It also deals with some social issues, some issues that, of course, are different for each person, but also the place, the city, the country, and the economic circumstances. Everything plays here. So every time Donnie invited someone else, we got like more information, and we understood more about that struggle. So that was great, and Donnie always was very helpful on explaining many things to us that maybe we understood one way, and sometimes they needed some correcting, and of course that's how it is. So there was like a constant feedback from them and from us to them, so that was great.
Clearly the production process was quite challenging. I'm wondering, what was the most challenging aspect of that? Was it the schedule, or was it something else? Was it like, was there a technical issue somewhere along the way that you had to overcome?
What do you think, Alejo? There would be so many.
I think it was different things, not just one, but a lot of things was very challenging. Maybe at the beginning, we are from Colombia and different culture. At the beginning, to understand and history and a story try to explain how your environment or your neighborhood or your country, your culture, try to affect your aim in your career or your decisions, your decisions. It's very different for us. And for example, when we try to suggest something to Donnie, we said something from our perspective, from Colombian perspective, and they say, no, that's not correct. But for us, it's correct. And in the both ways, we try to explain different perspectives in our and different cultures. And after that, we have some challenging part about the COVID time.
Yeah, totally. And what Alejandro says is very true. Cultural differences will always take place. And especially, as I said, since it's a very complex issue, a very adult theme, and it deals also with political, social stuff. So we tried as hard to interpret it in the same way as Donnie, as Shaq, and all the team there. But sometimes we got some things wrong, so they were very quick to point to us that no, that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about this. So that was very nice. I think we all learned a lot from the process. Yes. And I think from the technical side, not just because the pandemic forced us to work remotely completely. Even Alejo and I, we live close. We live like 20 blocks from each other, and he lives with Sophie, so they were together. But at one point, the quarantine was so strict that we didn't see each other for many months, and yet we saw each other every day on Zoom, like 3, 4, 5 times a day, you know. And same, it was the same with everyone from the team. I think one thing that was positive is that both Alejandro and I, and many of the team, not everyone, but many, had already worked remotely before the pandemic, because animation, it's been kind of going towards that. Yes, there are the huge studios where everyone works together, but there are the medium or small size studios. And I think before COVID, it was common that, you know, they gather teams remotely. So they were already pipelines. We didn't use Zoom, but, you know, we had different software to move files and work remotely. So we had some experience in that. Of course, not in such a huge undertaking, but anyway, we knew, and I think from the beginning, one thing that we both were very adamant on was we need to build a strong workflow and a strong pipeline to make sure that, yeah, everyone's working from their home, but things go out well. But I think the psychological part was hard, and I think it was the same all over the world. Yeah, people maybe we are used to working from home, but we're not used to being. No one was used to being forced to be inside their homes for months at a time, and, you know, the stress and everything. So it's funny. I think we had our very own HeadNoise issues going on all along the production, but it was different because it was COVID, it was the pandemic, it was our families. We couldn't be in touch with our parents and all of that. So I think everyone in the team was handling this in a different way. But it's funny because we will always look back at HeadNoise and yeah, we did that during the COVID pandemic of 2020. So yeah, there were many issues, but we pulled through somehow.
That's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys, you know, as a company and as, you know, the leaders of this team that's, you know, trying to put this film together, how did you kind of rally the troops and try to keep everybody sort of positive and you know, on the same page and being able to deliver what they needed to deliver to you to keep the project going and on time? Later
we'll see what Alejo thinks about this, because actually we handled different teams. Yeah, we were both the directors, so we both handled like the overall stuff. Thankfully, we had in the production side, Sophia and also Myra. Myra came like at the middle of the project, so they handled most of the production stuff. It was quite something, and Alejo and I handled more of the 3D stuff and animation stuff. All of the teams, and at the same time Alejo handled like half of the team and I handled the other half. Of course, we had a lot of meetings, just the four of us, to decide on many things, and also we played it more like a very big studio, which we are not, but it was such a big project that we said, okay, this time we need to do things kind of differently. So, for example, Alejandro is the head of character modeling and all modeling, but we had like sub heads, like sub directors of modeling, of rigging. So he spoke with the heads of different teams, and they spoke with more people.
As the project, we need to face new problems, new things, new for us, I think.
And of course, up to that point, it sounds like perfect. Of course, from the middle of the project till the end, like the second half of it, at one point it started becoming a little bit too much. So Alejandro and I had so many tasks and so many stuff to do that at one point, yeah, we did have some, we were both very stressed. So I remember Mayra, which was the producer, one of the producers. Every morning she would tell us, okay, Rafa and Alejo, for today you have these tasks, and they were like 20. And from yesterday you had another 20 and you did 15, so now you have 25. And it was absolutely crazy. And sometimes it was 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And I would say to Alejandro, how are you doing? And he says, I'm about halfway. And I was the same. So I think this It's always a constant learning on this. I think you always want to do as much as possible. I, for one, did a lot of things, and Alejo did another lot of things. I animated, like, I wanted to animate, like, I don't know, 15 shots. I remember at the beginning I said, oh yeah, these 15 or these 20 shots I want to do myself. I want to animate those because I'm an animator, so I want. At the end, I think I did 4 shots. And it was so hard because every week Myra would ask me, Rafa, what's happening with these shots? And I said, I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it. So I got to animate the first and last shot, so that was great for me. But of course, it always happens, And Alejo the same. He modeled characters. He modeled props. He was doing textures, and at the same time, he had like 10 more people, 20 more people doing that stuff. But it wasn't enough. It's a lot of work.
Never enough time, never enough people, never enough money.
Totally.
I'm curious if you talk a little bit about the look of the film, because it has a very unique visual style. Can you talk a little bit about coming up with what the film looks like and your character designs? Because they are very, you haven't seen them before. They're very, very unique to this project.
Yes, but at the beginning we tried to find the style of the short film, and that was challenge too, because we tried to keep stylized characters, but we want to keep for example, the graffitis, the buildings, and the bricks on the buildings was a little bit real, and what we tried to mix those styles, and I think we made it a good result in the style, and that was very, very cool process, I think.
Were there a lot of did you have to do a lot of like redesigns, or was your first go kind of how you ended up at the end?
Actually, the start of the project required that we kind of had a head start because time was of the essence and money as well. So no, I think we never actually thought of doing the designs ourselves. We spoke about this with Donnie. So we showed them different artists that we had worked with, or some that we knew but we hadn't worked with, and he liked some, we liked some others, and we agreed on some of the artists. So that process was actually I think it was quite easy, that part, because we found a team for doing the environment designs, and another team to do the character designs. And actually that process was easygoing. Most of the stuff they showed was really good. So we gave like some input before showing Donnie and the rest of the team. So we gave some notes. The designers would come back with those notes, and then we showed them. Actually that part I think was very easygoing compared to what came.
Yeah.
I think the important part was that we didn't want it to look realistic humans, hyper realistic. That was not our intent. We knew we didn't want that, and at the same time it was not a comedy, it wasn't a children's series, so we also didn't want a completely cartoony characters that would have nothing to do with the theme. So it was kind of in the middle. The proportions, we knew the proportions needed to be realistic. We knew the environments needed like that grid and that real neighborhood feel. But the characters, the proportions were real, but the faces were stylized. And I think that's the style that Alejandro likes most. And I think it served very well for his work as a character modeler.
Yeah, I mean, the film plays beautifully, and the story, like you mentioned before, is so important, and so it's just something that's always prescient and always in the back of our minds. And so, congratulations, the film is really fantastic. And
thank you, Marina.
Thank you very much.
I'm curious now. This is, as a studio, sounds like it's your biggest project. What do you guys have next? Like, now that you've learned all of these new things, making HeadNoise, what's next for you?
Alejo, you take this one. And then I'll give some input.
I don't know. I think we take this year, we take some rest and try to do something personal things. And I think Rafael and I, we we will talk about the new projects comes.
I think HeadNoise was such a huge project. And as I said, not only the pandemic, personally, while I was editing like on the last weeks, I think Alejo was finishing some of the rendering, some of the lighting, and I was making the final edit. And during that time, my father got very sick, so I was kind of taking care of him, and at the same time finishing this, which was really difficult. And he passed away a few months ago, and so it's been a really hard year and a half. So we're very proud of HeadNoise. I think we both needed, and everyone in the team, but we both needed a quick a pause or some kind of vacation, you know. So this year, yeah, we focused on some different. We've made some smaller projects. We've worked for other studios' projects, so we've done like smaller parts. And I think also personally, I would say that directing HeadNoise and at the same time directing with Alejandro and at the same time doing so much of the actual processes, animating. I personally supervised the animation and I did the storyboard, and Alejo did a lot of the lighting, of the modeling, of, you know, so many processes. I learned from that, so I don't think I would do that again, in the sense that I would, if I direct something so big again, and I'm sure I will, but I wouldn't do so much of the actual processes. I would, so it's a constant learning. So yeah, I would say a big lesson for me was if directing such a big project, even between two people, is so much work that I think it's not right to try to do other stuff as well at the same time in the project. I think it's kind of an ego thing. You wanna also put your hand in there, and maybe some directors are also actors in speaking of live action, and they wanna appear in some scenes. But I think the ones with the most experience, so Peter Jackson just appears in one shot of his films and he just like passes by and that's it. And so I think that's the big lesson, and more in animation. So
I'm sure Rafael and I will do something special in the future, I think.
That's so awesome. Well, you know, congratulations again. The film really is fantastic. And I can't wait to see what you guys have for us in the future. We hope to see you at Spark again very soon, hopefully with a new project and hopefully in person next time.
I'm sure it'll happen. And thank you so much, Marina, for having us and for the kind words about the project. We hope everyone that's listening to this and seeing this interview has a chance to see the short film. And it was we were the two directors, but really animation is always such a team project, such a team effort, and it was a huge team from people all over the world. And yeah, I think it's like 40 people, or I don't know, maybe even 50. I don't know. If you look at the credits, it looks like an actual feature film. So, and everyone worked so hard, and everyone, I think for most people, it was such a different project. So some of the team had worked on big films, but this was different. It was different in many ways. So I think everyone gave it their all to make it as beautiful as possible. So I just want to give a shout to the whole team, and yeah, hope everyone likes it.